Hello, everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on True Story FM. I'm Pete Wright, and I'm here with Nikki Kinzer.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Pete Wright.
Oh, hi.
Oh, hi.
Fancy seeing you here in this questionarium.
I like that. Questionarium.
Yeah. It's the welcome to the questionarium.
Yeah.
Today, we are taking on some listener questions you have asked, and we are answering, and we hope we give some good answers.
We hope so.
Yes, that's it.
We'll see how this goes.
yeah, we're rolling the dice on another LQ. So before we get started, head over to takecontroladhd.com to get to know us a little bit better. You can listen to the show right there on the website or subscribe to the mailing list, and we'll send you an email each time a new episode is released. If you were to join us over at patreon.com/the ADHD podcast, that's really our favorite place for you to join us, because then for a few bucks a month, you would be listening to this as a live stream. You would be hearing it right now. You could ask more questions as we record this thing live, and we could answer them. And it's really, really great. We do a bonus section at the end of each episode. If we have a guest, they stick around and answer questions. We really try to make that member feed, the Patreon audio feed, something of real value when you are a supporting member on Patreon and have the luxury of being able to listen to us record live. So again, patreon.com/the ADHD podcast to learn more. All right, here we go. It's listener question time. Do you have, as you survey the outline, do you have a particular order that intrigues you?
No, I just say we go from top to bottom.
Okay.
Because that way, if we go all over the place, we're going to forget which one we answered and which one we haven't. So
okay, that's fair. Well, the first ones are easy. They're easy and mostly for me.
Yes.
And so I shall begin. The first one is, what is the microphone that you are using for the podcast? The quality is great. Thank you. The microphone, we have two different microphones. Nikki's microphone is the ATR 2100X. It is a USB cardioid dynamic microphone. It has both USB and XLR connection. So if you have an audio device that you plug yours into to control things like gain and volume and monitoring, you can do that, but you can also just plug it directly into the USB port on your computer.
And it has tape.
And it's taped. Nikki's is taped.
So that it holds its position properly, because somehow I think I did something.
Something broke.
Broke. And so I taped it back together.
Yeah. It is right now. The microphone itself is about $50 on the
it's not
Amazon right now.
At all.
It's not an expensive mic, and it's one of those mics that the closer you get to it, if you're in a really sound controlled room.
Hello.
There you go. See how good that sounds? Sounds so much better.
It is better than when I'm not as close.
Yeah.
And now I'm close.
It makes me do more work when it's down below.
I'm
you.
so sorry.
Okay.
I'm just gonna keep it right here.
That's where it belongs, right there.
Okay.
So we can see, if we can see the tape, you're in good shape.
All right.
See the tape?
I try to hide
in good
the tape.
shape. No, don't hide the tape.
Don't hide
anyway,
the tape.
it's a perfectly serviceable mic for podcasting, and it does great. It's the mic I use when I travel. When I throw something in my bag, I use that one. What I use day to day, because remember, I podcast a lot, you guys. Like, I'm just on the mic all the time. And so I invested a little bit more. I'm using the Neumann KMS 105 MT condenser microphone super cardioid pattern, and it is XLR only. So you have to use an audio device like a USB box to plug in the audio to convert the analog signal to digital signal for your computer. But it's much more expensive. I mean, right now it's like $700 for the mic alone. So it's spendy, but man, it's paid for itself over and over and over again. I've used it for years. It's very, very rugged. It's a stage microphone. Like, it's designed for big voice concerts. So
you have a big voice.
I just like how I sound on it, right? It takes a lot of time to figure, when you're recording as much as I do, like, you just kind of start hearing what you sound like on a given microphone. And I like this one the best. And I've used a bunch. So I landed on the Neumann KMS 105. And if you're interested, I'll put the links in the show notes for that. So I also use on my end, part of what makes a microphone like this one, the analog to digital conversion is really, really good because I also have a USB Pre 2 box from Sound Devices. And it is it's a tank of an audio device. And it is really, really great at taking audio, giving me a lot of fine control. There's no software. It's just everything you need is in the box, and it's all knobs and switches and things. And I like that. Like, I don't have to worry about software breaking the stuff that I'm using. So I use those two things for capturing audio. That's
all right.
I think that's the answer to the question.
That's the answer.
Let's see what else. I think I've heard Pete talk about having another podcast about movies he's on, or maybe he just likes to listen to. I was wondering, since Pete is someone who enjoys movies, what movies have you seen lately and what would you recommend? It shouldn't be just me. I mean, do you have any?
Movies. Let's see. I just watched a movie with Hilary Swank called The Good Mother.
Mm-hmm.
I watched that over the weekend. I didn't love it.
Okay.
It was fine, but I don't care if I ever watch it again.
Okay.
That's the last one I can remember. It's one of those times where like you'll get asked a question and then you can't remember anything.
You can't remember anything.
Like, do I even watch movies? Yes, I do. I know I watch movies, but now I can't remember like what they all were.
Well, you
do a podcast.
I do a podcast. I do a bunch of podcasts. So I do the main podcast on movies that I do is called The Next Reel Film Podcast, REEL, obviously, film podcast. And as a part of that, we also do Movies We Like, where we interview filmmakers and talk about the movies that inspire them. And I do Sitting in the Dark, which is another monthly show where we talk about like a collection or a theme of horror movies specifically. It's kind of a panel show. So all of that is a part of The Next Reel Film Podcast that we do. And I've been doing that show since 2011. Mostly, you can find out the movies that I watch on Letterboxd. If you haven't played with Letterboxd, it's a great social media network for movie lovers. It's Letterboxd. There's no E at the end. So Letterboxd. And I am at Pete Wright over there. I'll put the link in the show notes there too, so you can see it. Now, I do have a movie to recommend. We have been watching a bunch of horror movies because we're doing a series on the Fangoria Chainsaw Award winners.
I don't even know what that is.
And I watched one that, if you're into creepy movies, check out Sleep Tight. It's a Spanish movie, all filmed in Barcelona, and it is about the shenanigans that go on in a members-only apartment complex in Spain, and it is creepy, so creepy. But the movie that I think might resonate with y'all is called Turtles All the Way Down. Have you heard of this?
No, not at all.
Okay. So the book was written by John Green, and my whole family is a big fan of John Green.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote the book, and the book tells a story of, it's really him telling the story of his life with OCD. And he tells it through the world of a 16-year-old girl, a high school student named Aza, and about her experience with OCD and intrusive thoughts. And I've never seen a movie that is more attuned to a mental health experience, I think, than this one, in terms of the reality of modern experience.
Interesting.
It is, and there's some of it, it's a YA movie, and so some of it is like the dialogue is super saccharine and sweet, but really her lived experience and the way they tell the story of how she lives with OCD and the trouble of her callus that she keeps opening because she thinks it's infected, and her fear of being in a hospital and because of the infections that she can get, it's extraordinary. Mm-hmm. And it's streaming on Max right now. That's the only way you can see it. But it opened just Friday the 3rd. So it just came out. And I want to recommend it because I think John is a conscientious creator, and I like the work that he does. And this movie is a really interesting exploration through the lives of these interesting characters. And so for me, it is a 4-star and a heart on Letterboxd, and you can find me, just search for Pete Wright, but I'll put the link in there. If you are also a Letterboxd user, I would love to connect with you.
Cool.
I think this next question is a plant.
I do too.
Mm-hmm. I hear?
I think this is a total planted question, folks.
Get ready. Did I hear that Nikki or Pete or both wrote a book? Where can I find the book? I love listening to the ADHD podcast every week, so I'm sure I would enjoy a book version of the podcast too. You're in luck.
Wow. What a great question to come up.
Such a great question. Thank you, whoever you are, for asking this question. We're actually really excited. We did write a book. It's called Unapologetically ADHD. It comes out September 4th, and pre-orders are, you heard it here first, I think, available now.
Right.
What do you want to say?
Well, yes, we are very excited about the book. We just took our photo over the weekend for the book's author photo that goes on the back of the book, right? So that's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it's in production and it should come out in the fall. And it's a book around planning. And it's based off of a lot of the stuff that I do in GPS. And Pete Wright has contributed his part of the book exactly the way that we do the podcast. That is what's kind of fun about the book, is that it's very similar to, I bring a topic and Pete likes to, talk about it in his own experience. And he likes to share metaphors, and he's a storyteller. So he has these beautiful written essays in each chapter of the book, talking about the topic that I'm talking about in the lens of an ADHDer and his own experience. And so it is really as close to a podcast episode in a book version as you can get.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's pretty close.
Yeah, I think it's really close. But we're both very excited. We've worked very, very, very hard. Writing a book is not easy. But we are very proud of it.
What is it? As we record this, it's May, early May.
Mm-hmm.
I won't be too specific, but we started writing the book in November of last year.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time already, and the release date is currently September 4th.
Yes.
Assuming all the fulfillment gods are in cahoots.
Right.
We should
cool.
have it on September 4th. And I will put the pre-order link in the show notes if you are so interested. Let me tell you, I know I that hardcover book. I know it's a hardcover book. And I think there are people like me who see hardcover and think, yeah, wait for paperback. But if you are interested in this show, maybe buy the hardcover. It'd be a really neat gift for me and Nikki is to amp those pre-orders, because it turns out, really helps book sales.
It matters.
I can't believe I'm saying that on a podcast right now.
I know.
It feels like a trope, but it turns out it's really true. And I can already see, when you look at the book, you'll see our placement on the charts in each category. You can scroll down and see that we're actually we're doing better in business inclusivity than we are in the ADHD pre-order section.
Right. I don't know why. I mean, it makes sense, I suppose, but yeah.
Yeah.
What cracked me up about that, though, is when we first noticed that it was on Amazon and we could see the rankings, and I hadn't even finished the last chapter of the book yet. And I thought that was really funny. I'm like, oh my gosh, they have a lot of faith that this is going to get done, because it's not even finished yet and it's up and
funny.
Being pre-sold. So
Kristen is, thank you, Kristen, for hanging out in the live stream. And you have a question that is appropriate for everybody. Are you going to make an audiobook? And the answer, it's really interesting. I did not understand this, but when we did the book deal with the publisher, fantastic publisher Wiley, they're awesome. Audiobook is not a standard part of it. It is not a foregone conclusion that there will be an audiobook. So we found out months later that, yes, they actually did sell the rights to a partner publishing house that does audio, and that they're going to produce an audiobook of it. And the way they tell us is the audiobook will be released 4 to 6 months after the book is released. And that's just production time of the cycle of what it takes to get it done. So there will be an audiobook coming. There is an ebook, Kindle version, all of that is also there. You can pre-order it at Barnes & Noble and Amazon. And I think that answers all the questions. So the audiobook is coming. Oh, I guess the second question is, are we doing the audiobook? The answer to that is no.
No.
We thought about it for a hot second.
About it, and we could have auditioned for it.
Yeah, they would have made us audition.
but which is funny. Can I
Yeah.
audition to be Pete Wright, please? And then you be Nikki. We'll just switch.
Oh, totally swap parts. That would have been
Yeah.
really fun.
But no, after that's another piece that we didn't really realize is that there's a lot of components that go into recording an audiobook too. And so we decided to leave it for the experts, the professionals. And then who knows, maybe someday they'll say, hey, we would really like you guys to do it, and we'll do it. But
Yeah. Maybe
we're
on
okay.
a second book.
Yeah. We're okay with having professional readers do it.
We really are. It was the audition bit that I was just like, oh, okay, I'm really fine doing the podcast. It's going to be weird. I don't even know if we're going to get a chance to hear who is going to do our parts.
Yeah.
Like, how do you cast me?
I don't know.
And you.
But I did ask that it would be a male and female because I did want us to, have some kind of reality, portrayal of us. So we'll see.
Okay. So that's the business. Then the internal category, the behind the scenes category. Thank you for those questions. Now we have a question on jobs. I have been fired from several jobs, most of where I lasted less than a year because of ADHD. When it comes to talking to a potential employer in the future, how do I explain why I changed jobs so often? Also, I'm not sure what to do when I am asked to provide references when applying for a new job. Unfortunately, I don't have any recent references because of the repeated job failures. What do you think?
Right. Okay. So there's a few things that I think about here. One is when you're looking for a new job, I would actually sit down and do a little bit of reflection of why these last jobs haven't been working out. Because if there have been several and you have been let go of each one, I would be really curious to figure out, what is the common thread here? And when we say it's because of ADHD, what does that mean? Because is it not the right job for you? There's a lot of jobs that aren't ADHD friendly, but then there are things that, can you find accommodations, or are they, is there a different type of career or job that you should be looking for that's different that maybe would accommodate more of how your brain works and thinks? So I guess my first step would be, let's just figure out like what's going on in these last jobs so that you're looking for the right job going forward.
Yeah.
And how does your ADHD show up so that when you do look for new jobs, you have a way to talk about it and in a way that doesn't blame it. And I just want to be honest about that. We can't just say, oh, it's always because of my ADHD. We've got to take some responsibility from that and figure out what needs to change. And that may not change. That may not mean that you have to change. It just may mean that you change the kind of job that you're searching for.
Yeah.
So when it comes to potential employers, this is where I would start. And I would really recommend too looking at different resources around like skill resumes, like how do you build a resume around your skills versus just about job. This is my job. This was my title. This is what I did there. So I would look at formats that are more around, here are my computer skills. Here are my communication skills. Here are the different instances that I used, in communicating with other teams and things like that, and start to build your resume more around your skills and not just about the jobs. And see if that doesn't help a little bit. With references, I think it's important to find, even if it's just a coworker, somebody that can, vouch for you that, yes, you were in this position and these were the things that you were doing. Most of the time, references do not honestly give a lot of information outside
Not
of
anymore.
outside of, yes, this is when that person you worked here. So don't lie. Don't fudge on the numbers, because an employer, a potential employer, could still call regardless if you gave them permission and not, just to verify your employment. So I wouldn't fudge on anything. But if there's any type of coworker, colleague, somebody that you could talk to that could just vouch that, yeah, this person did this and whatever, could help. It doesn't have to necessarily be a supervisor, is what I'm thinking. And then I would practice when you're in an interview on how you talk about your past positions. I wouldn't necessarily say you were fired from them. I would say that they weren't good matches, or, you found going into it that it just wasn't something you really wanted to do. I would try to stay away from, any kind of negative talk, or bad mouthing or blaming, because that's not going to help you. So I would definitely role play being in an interview and being asked those questions, and how are you going to respond, and having kind of a script in mind so that you feel more confident and really can almost, with role playing, kind of get off of the subject a little bit and keep
Yeah.
going into about why you should be their employee and what you do, what you have to offer and what your strengths are, and, stay away as much as you can from these other things. And I just, on last, before you say anything, this feels, I know you're like, I want to talk, but I just want this person to know that, my guess is that you might have a lot of emotion and feel bad about this stuff. And so I don't think it's a bad idea to also go to therapy and really talk through it, because maybe some of these things where you've had some job failures, it doesn't mean it's a personal failure. It just wasn't a job that worked out for whatever reason. So I hope you can work through some of those emotions, because I just have a feeling that this person's probably beating themselves up pretty badly. And
Yeah.
I hope that, you can work through that and see that you have a lot of other opportunities that you can shine in. We just,
Yeah.
you just have to find what those are.
I don't know that I have much to add. I just want to emphasize, really, more than anything else, the idea of focusing on the positive aspects of past jobs and the skills, I think, is a really good point. And I think it's okay to craft a resume that emphasizes you want to find the right fit. Right.
Right. Yeah.
For your set of skills, the things you're demonstrated to be good at. The other thing about references, you can use LinkedIn references. Like, you can say, hey, reach out to former coworkers and colleagues and say, hey, write me a reference on my LinkedIn profile. You can request references and you could use those on your resume, right? And so they don't, like Nikki said, they don't have to be direct supervisors. They also don't have to be the most recent job, right? You can go
Exactly.
back. The other thing, I think the hidden gem, volunteer references. If you have ever volunteered for an association or an agency for helping to just get things done, reach out to those people. If you've never volunteered, consider taking a few hours a week to volunteer for an organization in your area that needs an extra set of hands. Use sort of some charity time and some sweat equity time to build some new relationships with people, and maybe find some relationships that people might want to use to advocate for you in the form of a reference.
That's a great idea.
So
That's a great idea.
that's what I have to contribute. Not much. You did great. That was perfect.
Thank you. You too.
All right.
And good
let's
luck.
talk about the next
Good
question.
luck on the
yes,
job search.
Good luck, and thank you for writing. Could you talk about the gut-brain connection and how it may relate to ADHD symptoms? Is there a past podcast on this topic you can point me to? And production note, Melissa dug through the podcast history, and we don't have one specifically addressing this, though we do have a blog post that we can put in the show notes, too, that touched on it. I'm fascinated by this, as you can imagine, right now.
Right. Yeah. I just actually went to look at the blog post, because it's like, when did we write this? So when I think of gut feeling, I think of your instinct. Like, what is your
but this isn't about instinct.
But that's
Nikki.
not about instinct.
This is about your biome and inflammation, and how it's also called the gut-brain axis. And it refers to the communication between your gastrointestinal tract and your central nervous system.
Yeah,
and
I know nothing about that.
No,
I was thinking it was like your gut, what is your gut telling you? Okay,
not even remotely.
I took that way too seriously. Okay, I have no idea.
Well, I do.
What do you got?
And I think we should have someone who is we should have somebody on the show. We have, I mean, I got some ideas for some physicians who are good at gut stuff and could come talk to us about this, because it's fascinating. Because the gut microbiome, as they call it, right? The stuff that lives in your gut is, I mean, you're just full of microorganisms that play a really critical role in maintaining your health as you digest stuff and as you extract nutrients. And it really relates to the function of your neurotransmitters and your nervous system and how you think, and how you react, and your emotional stability. And so many of those things are linked to ADHD, right? The same neurotransmitters found in the brain, like serotonin and dopamine and GABA, are produced in the gut. So if your gut isn't functioning, these neurotransmitters that are essential for regulating mood and attention and other executive functions can be completely thrown out of whack. And if you're living with ADHD, those things are exacerbated. All right. The other piece is, and this is a huge one, and I have a couple of books on. One is called Wheat Belly, and the other one, oh my goodness, I need to dig for it. It's on my shelf, but it's upstairs.
I think I've heard of Wheat Belly.
Oh, Wheat Belly.
Have you talked about it before?
Probably, because I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
Weird to be a fan of that stuff. Anyway, this is the deal, that inflammation is the universal killer, right? Inflammation in your system will kill you. It's how we die, right? And getting your inflammation in check when you still can is important. It's important for joint health and muscular health, and it's important for brain health and nervous system health. Chronic inflammation in the gut is linked to increased inflammation in the brain directly, right? Which contributes to the development of neurological and psychiatric disorders, including exacerbating symptoms of ADHD. So and this is not just diet, but it is the connection between diet and stress and what they call dysbiosis, right? Dysbiosis is the imbalance of the gut microbiome. And finally, like when you look at the vagus nerve, I have a kid with vasovagal syncope, non-convulsive vasovagal syncope, which is a seizure disorder where they just sometimes seize up when the vagus nerve
You have a kid that does this?
Yeah, I do. And
wow, I didn't know.
And sometimes if there's a sudden change in blood pressure, they will just seize up. They have a 10 to 20 second seizure and then kind of wake up and be like, oh, this is fascinating. What happened? So this vagus nerve is a big deal, and it's a really important part of the gut-brain axis, right? Because it is a direct line of communication between the gut and the brain. And stimulation of the vagus nerve and lack of stimulation of the vagus nerve has shown to have a variety of positive and negative effects on mood, attention, and other cognitive functions. So much of this is related to what you put in your engine, right? That your diet, what you eat. If your gut is out of whack, you can't pull out nutrients like omega-3s and fatty acids and the various nutrients that you need. So getting that stuff in order, getting your gut health in order is important for all of this stuff. So yeah, I've been, as you can imagine, I've been diving in to a lot of this research,
of course, yeah.
Getting ready for what's going on this week for me. And I just feel like I'm super intrigued by at the prospect of talking to somebody specifically about the gut-brain axis. So no, fair listeners, something is coming.
Yeah, that's so interesting
about this topic.
And don't listen to me about your instinct unless you have a gut problem. Like
unless
you really feel like something's
yeah.
wrong. Yeah.
If your instinct is to eat better, you should follow that instinct.
You should follow that instinct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So. Okay. What do you do when you're trying to get back on track, but you're overwhelmed? I feel like I'm on a spinny thing, looking at multiple paths, and I can't figure out where to go. I'm lost in my head. First, there is I want to share a comic that I will read because it's amazing and it reminds me exactly of this. And it was actually in our community, and I have sent it to everyone. It's a conversation between a blue bubbly therapist and a blue bubbly patient. And the therapist says, "Update me on the objective." I was focused on a frightening scenario, but then realized concern was unwarranted. Good. But I imagined a new frightening scenario. This is not the objective. I request a positive statement. I will never deplete my supply of concerns. No, my imagination is powerful. Better.
Better.
That slays, right? That is exactly kind of my sensory experience of when I am overwhelmed, is like I can come up with all the reasons that I'm going to fail at everything that's next all at once on the spinny thing.
Right.
So the first thing is, I go through it from a productivity perspective. If I can get my brain to stop spinning, and I usually need some sort of a mindfulness break, and I rely on things like my family, and I rely on things like, walking outside and doing something like standing in the rain or standing in the cold or some sort of sensory change. But mostly all I want to do is get down to prioritizing so I can look at the direct impact of my immediate choices on those next steps. Like, who am I going to be letting down if I choose one thing over another, and start having a conversation in my head about that. And from there, it's just about breaking those tasks down so that I can feel better about taking them on. I set my realistic goals, right? I go through the process we've talked about. And I just try to do it from a perspective of forgiveness. Like, it's okay to feel bad right now. I get to own my relationship with that immediate sense of lowercase g grief that I don't know how to move forward. And once I lean in sort of to that and embrace that grief, I'm usually able to get to the other side of the feeling.
Yeah.
If I just say, hey, this sucks. I know it sucks. It sucks subjectively and objectively. Like, no one's going to look at me and say, hey, you look like you're really winning right now.
Right.
But once I say that out loud, like I can usually get back to a point where I can relate to the world around me.
That's great.
What do you think? How'd I do?
I think you did great. I do.
Okay.
I do. I think, this is a common feeling for a lot of people that feel this every single day, right?
Yeah.
So it's not always
Right.
just coming back from something. It's just getting back on track, because it's a new day. So I think that there's a lot of power in understanding and realizing that that's what's happening, is that you're looking at everything all at once, feeling like everything is going to fail all at once, and being able to pause for a moment and realize that not everything is as urgent as it feels. And I think that the prioritizing becomes really important. I think verbal processing is really important with ADHDers. So if you're feeling this way, to be able to talk to someone, and even if it's just talking about your to-do list, or talking about a surgery that's coming up that you're nervous about and overwhelmed about, like being able to like process those things with someone else can help decrease some of that overwhelm. And then you're identifying it, you're processing it, you're talking to other people about it. And then I think it goes back to what you're saying is, what do I zero in on and start breaking it down, and just really pay attention to that, and as hard as you can avoid everything else, because everything else is what's cluttering this focus, right? And is what's getting you in trouble. Sometimes in my own work, if I start to feel overwhelmed, if I have like multiple projects, I put them in like buckets, and I'll say, okay, I'm going to work 1 hour on this online course, and then I'm going to work 1 hour on the GPS membership, and then 1 hour on podcasting, so that I know that at least I've gotten my hands in a bucket, because it feels worse to me to keep ignoring the online course because it's not as important. But then it keeps getting dragged, and I keep feeling overwhelmed, and it's such a big project. And so I have to break it down, and like somehow at the end of the day, what is going to make me feel better and moving these things forward. And that's getting my hand in that bucket just for a little bit.
Yeah. It's the visit approach, right?
It's the visit approach.
It's so beautiful and just reminds you of the things that are important. I'm in this state, right, for the true story side of my life, True Story FM, that I don't think we've ever had a perfectly complete website. Right?
Yeah.
I do the website work, and I do so much website work for other people that I've never truly finished our own.
Yours. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so there's stuff that just looks undone. And I am really trying with an accountability partner to keep reminding me and keep me on task. I'm really trying to invest a little bit every day, just a little bit.
Yeah.
And God, I've been alive long enough to know better, but I'm still constantly surprised at how much progress you can make by just doing a little bit every day.
It's
I am
true.
still surprised by that. I should not be surprised by that. But it's like this gift, this awakening every day. I realize, hey, if I look back 2 weeks, I've made a lot of progress on this thing.
Right.
And so it's like that is a massive gift. The visit approach is just to move something forward a little bit. It's amazing.
It's
amazing.
And it lessens the overwhelm. I mean, and then
Yep.
you feel better at the end of the day. And
absolutely.
Yeah. Visit.
Yeah.
Good
Okay.
stuff.
We got one more. Are you ready?
Yeah.
I find that when I am really stressed or overwhelmed, my emotions tend to run more hot. That is, my temper seems to be much worse, and I seem to feel angry or act out in anger about everything. Then, once the major stressors have passed, it's like someone let the air out of my balloon and I come crashing down, feeling depressed and regretful of my behaviors when I was lashing out. Could this be related to my ADHD? How can I find ways to refocus and choose not to act out in anger when stress inevitably comes my way?
Well, the first question is yes. I mean, it definitely can be related to your ADHD because part of ADHD is the emotional dysregulation. And that's exactly what's happening is emotional dysregulation. It's reacting to something that may seem a little bit more intense than someone without ADHD experiencing the same thing. So you feel your emotions very intense, whether that's anger, but it can also be happiness and, all of the good feelings too, right? But when you're angry, that this emotional dysregulation is in full, play for you. And then we also have the RSD, which is the rejection sensitive dysphoria, which we've had Dr. Dotson talk about. We'll put that in the show notes as well. And he talks about that rejection piece of it and taking criticism really hard, taking, maybe you had an argument with someone or a disagreement, and now you're ruminating over and over again, about that conversation and feeling depressed and all of those things. So what is happening, I think, is definitely around those kinds of symptoms around ADHD. Where you can find help on refocus and choosing not to act out in anger is not really a question for me and Pete to answer. It's really something to more talk to your therapist about, because this is something that I would, if someone came to me with this in coaching, I would definitely want them to be talking to in therapy about this, because we don't know the intensity of the temper or the anger or what's happened. We don't know enough of the information, to be able to really help. I mean, I can give you some surface stuff around pausing and, taking yourself out of the situation if you can is always helpful, because when you're in the immediate, it feels so bad. So if you can walk away before you, do anything that you regret. But this is definitely one I would say talk to your therapist about and figure out, what kinds of things can help you with that.
I just want to add one thing that I think would be helpful for that conversation, which is, I've been a big fan for a long time of this idea of creating your own sort of user manual for your body and brain, right? Like like documenting the things that work. So we talk about the gut-brain axis, right? What are the things that make you sick or make you brain foggy, like when you eat them? Or what are those behaviors that change the way you relate to the world? And I think if you are in the space of finding these outbursts, like outbursts of rage and impulsive behavior, when you are finding the space of calm after, write it down. Write down
that's a good
the
point.
experience. Like, what are the triggers? So you can learn your own triggers for that uncertainty and be as specific as you can. Like, what was it about the state of overwhelm this time that triggered an anger response? What was it about the crash at the other side of it that caused you to feel regret? And write that down, because that's going to be your roadmap. Like, that's your outline for a conversation with a therapist. And they're probably, you're not diagnosing. You're going back to exactly what we talked about recently on a show, which is just focusing on behavior, right?
Right.
You don't have to say ADHD or any other diagnosis. You're not self-diagnosing. You're just saying, hey, here's what my day looks like.
Right.
And here are what I'm seeing is pretty big hot swings throughout my day, and I'd like to get some answers on that. I'd like some help processing that. I think that would be a super useful conversation.
I agree. And it's interesting because when you bring that up, I remember reading a book with it's about children that have really strong emotions, and I think the last name is Green, but I'm not sure. I can find out, and I'll give you the notes to put in the show notes. But one of the strategies with dealing with children with really strong emotions and that get really upset, is that preventative piece. Like, we got to stop it before they get onto the hamster wheel where you can't stop it. And so as you were talking, it kind of reminds me of that. As adults, I think knowing what your triggers are, knowing what might make you upset, it is that preventative nature, so that, because as we know, when you're in an ADHD spiral and you're in the middle of it, it's really hard to feel anything else but anger.
Right.
So really, I think that preventative piece is important, and being able to talk to somebody about that.
Yeah. Those are the questions.
The questions.
Look, we're under an hour. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody, for submitting your questions, those who did. And don't keep them coming. Sometimes we just, when we get them and they stack up like this, we'll do more of these episodes. So if you have things that are on your mind, ask them in the community. We sure like doing this. And we appreciate you being a part of it.
Thank you, everyone.
That's what I got. It's the end.
Yeah.
That's the end. You're the best. We appreciate you downloading and listening to this show. Thank you for your time and your attention. Don't forget, if you have something to contribute to any of the answers that we gave or anything else, we're heading over to the Show Talk channel on this Discord server, and you can join us right there by becoming a supporting member at the deluxe level or better. On behalf of Nikki Kinzer, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll see you right back here next week on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.